Hello, BookTube. I have a bigger subject on my mind for tonight's Stevestream that's going to 10 past the hour. I have a bigger subject in mind. Obviously, you can tell from the title and from thumbnail. But before we get to the subject of BookTube and BookTubers, I thought I would ask you a few rude and nosy questions about what I'm hoping is a completely different subject, and that would be serial killers. I'm wondering not how many times the young men out there in the audience think about the Roman Empire every day, but how often do you all think about serial killers? We could start the subject, which is not meant to dominate this. I have a whole bunch of BookTube questions to ask you as well. That's all these live streams are. It's just me asking you nosy questions. But unlike YouTube influencers that only ask questions on YouTube or Instagram, especially Instagram, when they've long since made up their mind. They're just lying to you. Where should we go on vacation? Hey, which outfit should I wear? You guys decide. All they want is the engagement. They just want the clicks. They wouldn't take your advice if it came with money. But before we get to that, we could start the subject of serial killers with a bookish angle, obviously, which is, do you like reading thrillers involving serial killers? Have you read any of the canonical ones? Do you go after them? Do you even read nonfiction? Are any of you true crime readers? Uh, do you maybe start historical with, for instance, Jack the Ripper and move forward from there? I, we could start with the bookish thing, but I also want to know what you think about it just in general. When you think about the fact that because serial killers are not a fictional creation, right? They exist. It's fiction that copied them. It's not fiction that made them. They exist. And I wonder what you think when that subject comes up, if it ever comes up. For instance, have you yourself ever had any even distant connection with the story of a well-known serial killer? It's unlikely, I suppose, because there aren't as many serial killers by a wide margin as there once were. I think the FBI currently lists somewhere between 30 and 50 possible active serial killers right now who have not been profiled, not been identified, obviously not been caught. Uh, and that's a fraction of what that number was, say, 30 years ago. Even in just America alone, or in the UK or wherever, it's a much smaller number for a whole bunch of possible reasons. We're not 100% sure what the reasons are. I think that ultimately one of the people we could have, I guess, to thank for that would be Ronald Reagan in this country because of the change in the prison system in the United States. The prison system in the United States went from uh, a revolving door that was brutally unfair and draconian to black people to now a brutally unfair system to everybody that does not revolve. You get in and you don't go out. You get in for any kind of reason. And it's millions and millions of Americans who are in the prison system. And that can make a difference. How many serial killers once spent time in prison before got out and were free in the public again without the public having any idea who they are. Also, uh, we have forensic science now that we didn't before. So it you can do. I'm sure some of you have seen TV fantasies like CSI and whatnot, where people have telescopic vision. Humans have telescopic vision when actually they don't. But even so, the amount of things you can do with modern day forensics is just amazing. So, someone who wants to rack up a serious body count, they can't just do it the way a serial killer did in the 60s or the 70s. They'd be caught almost instantly. And also, I would imagine that the vogue of serial killers that I think was probably sparked by Silence of the Lambs, where all of a sudden they were everywhere in the popular culture. All of a sudden, there were all kinds of not only dramas but docudramas about them. I imagine that had something to do with it, just raising the public awareness just a bit. That 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 these are circumstances in which you might encounter. So, this is something you should pay attention to, that sort of thing. But nevertheless, there have been major serial killers within the living memory of people who watch this channel. Some of you are old enough to remember some actual serial killers. I'd love to know if you or your family or a friend of an uncle or a friend of an uncle's friend had any tangential connection. I'd like to know what kind of tendrils these things send out into the normal world. This story, this kind of phenomenon. What kind of tendrils does it send out into the normal world? Or is it really isolated? Uh, and also, uh, what about if you've read anything about serial killers, or maybe you've read serial killer thrillers, which often tend to dump a lot of exposition. When you know anything like that, does it trigger? I'm not trying to be sensationalistic here. I'm actually asking. Uh, does that knowledge has that knowledge ever triggered in you any kind of a warning skin prickle about someone you know? It's an extreme long shot. Serial killers come in all shapes and sizes. In fact, if you had to say, I would say, if you had to say uh, a common trait, not universal, but a trait that they more often than not have in common, it's how normal they seem, even charismatic. How if they exist as a presence in your mind as someone you work with or you go to church with or whatnot, it'll probably be someone you like and someone that you absolutely do not suspect. This was a subject that came up last year in connection with something else here on BookTube, and the thing that was dunned into my head over and over again at the time was that these kinds of creatures, predators of any kind, it's vital to them, and they know it's vital to them that they not raise those kind of skin prickles in normal people. It's literally life or death for them not to do that. So they get really good at not doing that. But still, I wonder. That's all. So that's the weird subject that I'm lobbing out ahead of time in the first 10 minutes of this video. It's it's partially pragmatically motivated. Unfortunately, I think it's going to take up a lot of my summer. And unlike other writing, perhaps writing and research projects that are, come see, come saw, spending large amounts of time researching and reading about serial killers is going to be a rare instance in which I ask not only for money but for good money. But we shall see. It might not even happen. It's on my mind now. Uh, it's on my mind now, and I'm wondering what I mean. It's on my mind, and I'm doing a little preliminary groundwork, laying research, and when I do that, I'm naturally wondering what people who aren't doing that research think about this subject. So there you go. So there you that is the preliminary subject here of serial killers. But I have a bigger subject, but like I said, I'm hoping it is totally unconnected, which is BookTube and BookTubers. I just threw out the serial killer subject is something I threw out at first because it's on my mind. uh, it's working its way steadily into my day, and nobody wants to be with this kind of subject matter alone. I want to know what all the rest of you think. I'm not talking about murderers, right? I mean, we just famously in the news we lost a murderer, died. O.J. Simpson died. Uh, I was very annoyed in the various news articles that just reflexively said that this week he lost his battle with cancer. If there's anybody in the world where the phrasing should be "cancer won its battle against him," it's O.J. Simpson. But I'm not talking. He was just a murderer. He was. I'm talking about a serial killer where they don't necessarily know all their victims, and there tend to be a lot of victims. I tend to draw the line at, if you're a murderer, okay, fine, you could kill more than one person, but I think we all know what we mean by a serial killer, and there aren't as many of them as there once were. I'm sure that except for maybe aficionados of the subject, I'm sure that you couldn't name a single active serial killer now. There are a couple of dozen that are active in the United States now that we know of. More of them, there might be more of them that where police in various jurisdictions just haven't connected the dots. That's another thing that is true now that wasn't as true 50 years ago, which is the ease of travel. So it's entirely possible that there are more, but it's such a rare phenomenon now, even rarer than it used to be back in the days when there were 170 or 180 active serial killers or whatnot. That it's possible that none of you have had any connection with the subject at all. So I was just curious, but I don't want, God knows, I don't want to do a whole Steve stream about serial killers. At least I don't want this one to be that, because the main subject I had in mind was BookTube, which is not connected with serial killers. I'm realizing now that I should not have juxtaposed these two things. But uh, if we could stop here at the 10-minute mark, we could stop and change subjects uh, to BookTube. Is that going to work? Or should I should I just give in? No, no. I want to ask you questions about BookTube. I want to ask you how you BookTube and what. Excuse me. What aspects of BookTube you like? What aspects of BookTube keep you coming back? Now, keep in mind, this is not me edging my way sideways to the question that I decided a couple of years ago I was simply not going to ask. Not only ask you, but ask myself, which is why anybody watches this channel. I do not understand that subject. I am considering it to be a fundamental mystery of the universe, like prime numbers or the nature of the Trinity. So I don't bother. I'm not asking that question. There is. I've never had a good answer to that question that wasn't simply the bean. It's right there. There you go. Little side eye from Frida. Uh, no, instead, I'm asking just in general for BookTube. BookTube is kind of a weird phenomenon, right? It's on the platform of YouTube, but it doesn't act like YouTube. Most BookTube doesn't act like YouTube. It doesn't do any of the things that YouTube wants it to do. And I'm sure that your watching queue is full of ordinary people just turning on the camera and talking about books. Mine is. I watch a lot of BookTube, probably more than you do. And I, including the stuff included in the stuff that I watch, is a whole bunch of BookTube that does exactly what YouTube wants you to do. Uh, Unskippable ads, mid-video breaks, in-video sponsorships, lots and lots of phoniness, lots and lots of hyperkinetic edits, uh, off-putting stuff that makes you feel like, okay, I'm watching a show here, but I'm not watching a person. And if I'm not watching a person, why would I watch the show? Why would I do that? The show's not entertaining enough on its own. I I watch a lot of those channels, but I mostly watch this kind of BookTube. And I know why I do it, but I wonder why the rest of you do it. What is when you look at your YouTube subscription feed in the course of any day, a day's new so let's say you're a healthy person, you're not terminally online, and it's in 24 hours until you look at YouTube again. And you naturally you have a subscription feed and you look at those subscriptions. What does that make you feel? When you see that lineup of people. I mean, I don't want to say it's a lineup like it's network TV, but there is an element of that, right? I mean, that element is less strong in our little corner of BookTube than it is anywhere else on YouTube. It's a natural thing when you watch somebody on a screen every day to kind of think of them as not real. And we mitigate against that in this corner of BookTube more than any part of YouTube that I know of, where it's not that, where you might have once felt that, but now you've been in personal contact with a whole bunch of your favorite booktubers. You've got, if in my case, you have come over for wine and calzones, kicked off your shoes, had my little dog scream at you, uh, things like that mitigate against that quasi parasocial relationship. But even so, even if you're looking at that at your day's subscription feed, and even though the our corner of BookTube has mitigated against uh, feeling like these are entertainers rather than people. Our corner booktube is encouraging you to feel like these are people, like you're visiting with people. Even if that's true, it's still a lineup in a way, right? Because you're looking at your subscription feed and you're thinking, well, here's what I can expect from this person, and here's what I can expect from this person, and am I in the mood for this person? And what about this person? And that doesn't have anything to do with people creating shows in studios with their subscription milestone silver button behind them, uh, but rather just with people's different presentation styles. It is, to put it mildly, easily possible that you might have a long, nerve fraying day, get to the end of it, come home, cook yourself some ragu, and not really want to deal with me. So that's entirely possible. In a moment like that, you might much more want to kick off your shoes and watch Gina Stanier or Sarah at the Bookish Knitter or Shelley Swearingen or something like that, or Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading. You might want to do that rather than tune into my 10 videos with me leaning into the camera with my smallpox scars from 1872 and saying, here are the 10 things that irritated me today. But I'm wondering about what all of that means. What is this for you? What do you like versus what turns you off? I'm assuming in this little corner of BookTube that we have, it's mostly genuine. That seems to be the one common thing, is that it's genuine. And it's genuine regardless of the product that you end up producing or the size or success of that product. The two examples I always use here are Ollie at Criminale and Olive at A Book Olive. Olive makes very clean, very perfectly lit, very professional, very well spoken book related content, but it's completely genuine. It's not as raw and fumbling and dumb as for instance, the filming style on this channel, but there's never a minute where you think you're getting any kind of soap business. Nothing at all. And Ollie the same way. His channel is absolutely enormous, grown by leaps and bounds, but you never get the sense that he's not genuine. He does a lot of the BookTube bells and whistles things with merch and channel membership and whatnot, but never in a fake way, never in a way that makes you think that's the whole point, and so on and so forth. I mean, you've got those two at one end of the spectrum, and I think not to knock the quality of their content because their videos are really good, but they make very YouTube friendly videos as well, and I think that might account for some of the success of their channel. Is that YouTube likes what they're doing and would like more channels to be like that. And then you get all the way at the other end of the spectrum. I guess this channel would count as that, where there's not only no artifice, but sometimes painful lack thereof, and everything in between. You have people who upload very infrequently. You get people who are obviously very varying degrees of comfortable on camera. Some booktubers are very uncomfortable on camera, no matter how long they've been doing it. They don't seem to be able not to tense up, and you can see it. They don't sound that way with their friends. Not in the case of what I usually say with bad YouTubers, which is that they're lying and they don't talk this way to their friends, but rather that they don't sound this way. When they're relaxed, they don't sound this way. You get some people like that. You get other people who are completely comfortable on camera. don't mind the occasional and ah at all, and everything in between. And all of that is presented to you free every day on a subject that means a lot to you on books. And I'm wondering what this is. I have another premonition in my my rheumatism and my goiter and whatnot. I have another premonition that another wave of corporatization is about to descend on YouTube that will make it even harder to do this, whatever this thing is that we're doing every day. I have a feeling that another wave is coming, another clamp down. YouTube definitely doesn't want this. I don't think that's controversial at all, right? YouTube doesn't want what we're doing. It doesn't want people doing this. It's perfectly happy, I guess, now, grudgingly happy anyway, to carry a lot of this as background chatter for the channels that are doing what they want. But sooner or later, I mean, it's lasted longer than I thought. Sooner or later, uh, it's not going to want anybody to be doing something that it doesn't want. Sooner or later, it's just going to get rid of all of that, of everything that it doesn't want, and it's all going to be YouTube friendly content, content that YouTube likes, content that YouTube can monetize, which is good for the creators. I'm not at all as fire breathingly anti that as I once was, but in the meantime, YouTube seems at least relatively content to let some channels be like that and let all the rest of us just chat with each other. I don't imagine that's going to last. I can't imagine that will last. That didn't last with television. It didn't last with radio. It didn't last with cable. I find it hard to believe it's going to last here. But while it's still true, this weird thing that we're all doing, I wonder yet again what you all make of it. What do you make of it? What is BookTube to you? Again, I am not asking why you watch my channel. I do not, there is no answer to that question. Better just not to ask. But what about everybody else's channel? I'm curious to know what you make of it all. And there you go. In 20 minutes, those are my two subjects, serial killers and booktubers. Now let's look at the chat because we can't linger all night long. Let's look at the chat. Jasper and Danelli says, my favorite streamer. Oh, isn't that nice? That's very nice of you. Guys. Yes. I watch some streamers and they're painfully, it's painful to watch them. I watch, I think regularly probably 5 streamers, and of those 5, 4 of them are drugging themselves throughout the whole stream. They don't stop vaping. The vaping, the normal vaping, and also that little reed of THC. So they suck on the vape for a whole minute first, and you hear gurgling, and just imagine what it's doing to them. And then they put it down and pick up the little reed of an actual hard drug, a mind altering drug, and suck on that for a bit, and then back to the vape. And they just do that for 5, 6, 7 hours at a time. They mustn't be able to climb a flight of stairs when they're done. They must feel like absolute crap, but they do it anyway every day. But I don't. But anyway, let's see here. Kite 562 books and manga reviews. I'd work on that handle if I were you. Hello, everyone. I forget who you are. It's been so long since I started reading your name. Jess Book Girl TV. I love true crime. I don't typically love true crime. I almost never read it. Even in the heyday of, for instance, Anne Rule, when she was posting genuine numbers for true crime, I still didn't much read it. And now I'm thinking I have to make up for lost time. But when you say you love true crime, you don't only mean serial killers, right? Or are you saying that maybe you could tell me, is the true crime genre largely built around serial killers? Uh, and you're back. Just Book Girl TV is back. It's scary that serial killers walk among us. Look at the Gilgo Beach Killer. Yes, and the Gilgo Beach Killer comes. For those of you who don't know what Jess is talking about, the this Long Island serial killer was uncaught for years and years and years, and was just recently caught in a very familiar serial killer thing. It's never that they're caught at the top of the Empire State Building firing on the cops in a bloody do or die finale. No, it's always that they're hauled out of a normal suburban home. Uh, the Gilgo Beach Killer being caught underscores how rare these things are nowadays. Medium John Silver. I never think of serial killers unless the subject comes up on TV or YouTube. It's come up tonight, unfortunately. Jasper is back. I love reading about Jack the Ripper, but very much dislike reading other true crime. It has to be historical to me, I guess. Now, is that because it bothers you, or because you find modern serial killers boring? You don't want it to be contemporary. Is there maybe an element of it? Well, another thing that in other words, another thing that I'm trying to measure here, that I'm trying to gauge, is how much this subject bothers people, even if they have no connection with it whatsoever. Uh, that reading guy says to be a proper streamer, Steve needs those obnoxious headphones that are not actually working and are purely for show. Yes, the enormous inactive headphones. I really do need those with a bar across the top. The only reason that they do it is to signal their allegiance to one of their two deities. One of their two deities wears those obnoxious, non-functioning headphones all the time. They have every streamer, every dude bro has two deities that they worship, actively worship. They're not a guy that they admire; they worship them. One is a, a daylight deity, someone they can admit that they worship, and the other one is someone they absolutely cannot admit anymore that they worship. They still do worship this figure, but they can't admit it to anyone. They can't admit it on their stream, or their channel will be taken down. But the daytime deity that they all worship is Joe Rogan, and he has those things, and he makes $2 million a week, and that's all they dream about. They don't care about the credulity on command. They don't care about the dumb IDW guests. It's just the money. It's a staggering amount of money, and that's what they want. And he has those, so they all have them. Let's see here. Alex Williams. I only read one true crime book about Harold Shipman. Okay. Kite 562 books and manga reviews. Can we just call you Kite from now on? Let's just do that. I do watch true crime documentaries every now and then. You watch them on YouTube, I assume? on TV. That reading guy, I wouldn't put it past you, Steve, if you had telescopic vision. I don't have telescopic vision, and neither do any of the characters on CSI. If if you are Gil Grissom and you're just talking with someone, and suddenly you can see a squirming mite in between two threads of their jacket lapel, that's not how human vision works. uh, Randy Ray is here. Hello, Steve. Hi, everyone. Jasper Antonelli says, my mom had dinner with Stalin's daughter. I guess that's close enough to a serial killer. It's close. Of course, no one thinks of Stalin when the term serial killer comes up, because I think one of the elements of qualifying, so to speak, as a serial killer is that you have to be working against the prevailing attitude of the state. So a leader of state can't be a serial killer, even if their body count is, a million times higher than any serial killer. Uh, Jay Nicole says, yes, the Manson murders and the Night Stalker. There was also a child killer. He abused other children before the murder. Right, all the famous names. I'm just wondering. Uh, Jess says, I don't have any connections to serial killers. Well, that you know of. What about those instincts, those short hairs on the back of your neck? Does anyone ever strike you as seriously hinky? I guess that's not a phrase. That's not a word that's used anymore. But and again, it might not be a legitimate question, because in 9 out of 10 cases, all the people around some of the most notorious serial killers of all, their short hairs did not go up. Not at all. They would have been completely wrong. If you'd asked them if Stevestreams existed then, and I'd said, "Do you think anybody in your life is a potential serial killer? You have to name someone." None of them would have named the actual person with 30 bodies in his basement. Uh, Lindsay Reed says, "Hi, Steve. Happy Saturday. Happy Saturday to you as well." Omid Fazeli says, "I live in a country ruled by a serial killer who just hours ago launched drones and missiles to Jerusalem." Yes, yes, I saw that story. I immediately started reading. I read probably 100 different news outlets to try and get as many details as I could. Thought about you, because this is the thing that international analysts are worried about. They aren't worried about whether or not Germany is supplying arms to Israel. They're worried about this taking off. They're worried about this stopping being regional, as horrifyingly regional as it is, and stopping being small scale and suddenly engulfing the region and hence the world. Uh, and that I have no idea how this is going to go. I don't think this particular story has percolated into the public consciousness. Certainly not in America, which is getting geared up for what will be the only story in America next week and for the next month. Will be the first ever criminal trial of a former president of the United States. But this story ought to be front and center for everybody, because this could be World War III. Uh, Hannah's Books is here. When I was a child, growing up in rural North Carolina, I should do an accent. A naturally active serial killer was briefly believed to be in our neck of the woods. It turned out to be untrue, but it shattered the innocence of my town. Well, okay, but why are you being coy about the name of the serial killer? Surely the case is closed. Medium, or I wonder if I can guess. I am unfortunately now a little bit conversant on this subject, and I think by August I am going to be extremely conversant on one particular aspect of this subject. Medium John Silver, in the DC area in 2002, I was worried about encountering the Beltway sniper. Okay, there's an example, and that's an unusual example, because with 99% of serial killers, once the public is aware that a serial killer is out there, almost always the serial killer is linked to their profile of victim. And a sniper obviously won't have that. A sniper, anyone is a danger. Whereas in many, many, many cases, when it was known that a serial killer was out there, a lot of them weren't found until after it was over. But when it's known, the public also knows a profile. They know basically a very rough idea of who is in more danger than who. But with the Beltway sniper, no, not at all. Randy Ray is back. My college hall director murdered his wife. He was also charismatic, and he was a pastor at a church. They almost always have major or minor positions in local authority, and they're almost all extremely trusted. Uh, Hannah's Book says, yes, the DC snipers were terrifying everyone. I was watching that news, but then again, sinking involuntarily into this whole subject has made me realize that I have been following stories like this my whole life. where in the background, while I'm concentrating on savaging some John Updike novel, the TV is playing that so and so has been arrested, and the police are suspecting that there is a body in the basement or that he might have a body in a tool shed somewhere. Also, uh, I could be selling books and talking with people when the news at night, one little item concluding the news broadcast, uh, mentions that some serial killer has been murdered in prison or has been given the death penalty or whatnot, but always in the background. Uh, let's see here. That reading guy says, my skin would prick if I were one of those construction men working in Hyde Cottage and I got on your bad side. Well, at this point, the surest way for them to guarantee that I am entirely happy with them would be for them to show up once in a while. It isn't them being here that would make me mad anymore. It's I'd love to see them. I'd love to get some work done here. Uh, Jasper says reading about all about Jack the Ripper made me very depressed for an entire week. Jasper, you and me both. Reading about these creatures is extremely soiling. It is extremely disturbing. I, if if I am requested to do this for 5 solid months, I am going to ask money. I usually ask for pauper's fees, virtually nothing. Uh, I believe in doing favors for friends. I believe in doing favors for strangers. But anyway, Randy Ray is back, but I have no experience with any serial killers and no suspicions. No short hairs going up on the back of the neck. No one you'd point at. Present company excluded. Sean G says, "Do you use AI, and how do you think it will change literature?" I have never used AI. No, and I don't see that it will change literature. I mean, what would it do? How would it change literature? Uh, Kevin L says, "Is Anne Rule's The Stranger Beside Me about Ted Bundy worth reading?" Well, I didn't read it when it was the number one bestseller in the country for like 2 years. I didn't read it, and obviously, I'm going to have to because it's not just a question of getting familiar with serial killers, including the really big names, especially the really big American and UK names. It's also going to require me to read the books. It doesn't. I'm sure that if the project that I'm thinking of is anything like what I think it is, it won't require me to read the books, and I certainly won't be allowed to refer to them. But I am going, knowing who I am, I would read it, and I haven't read The Stranger Beside Me. Let's see here. Bot shows up with a pink waving hand. Jess is back. Yes, Kevin L. I read The Stranger Beside Me years ago, and it really scared me. DT says I've abandoned writing a thriller with a serial killer a la Lecter. Why did you abandon it? Was it not promising for all of the writing reasons that we've been talking about on Stevestreams? Or was it because you didn't want to write about a serial killer? Is that the point you're making? That reading guy is back. We have given you a million reasons why we watch your channel, but you refuse to accept them. I have never heard a good reason why anybody would watch this channel. There was something, what was it? A couple of weeks ago. I was wondering, a couple of weeks ago, I made the usual barrage of videos. I think I made 4 videos that day. And later that night, I never watch my own videos. Obviously, I make them, but I don't watch them. And later that night, I wondered, oh my, did I accidentally show somebody's personal information on that video? So I went back and watched it, and I didn't show anything that I was worried about. But I also finished the 30 minutes again, wondering why on earth anybody would watch this. So it's not. No one's ever given me a reason. But anyway, a view from the bar is here. How do you feel about Rushdie's memoir being embargoed? It's one of the few times I harbor no resentment at someone turning their tragedy into a payday. But did you see coverage of his book party? I did not see coverage of his book party. No, I'm not interested in that kind of thing. But I mean, right, he's turning it into a payday. Embargoes, I am told, help with paydays. I have never seen actual factual verification of that. Uh, I mean, it's not like often books are embargoed because the key salient points you don't want leaked to the press before, so that people don't feel like they need to read the book. But there aren't any key salient points here, so uh, I don't care one way or another. It bothered me a lot more when I worked in retail bookselling, but where a customer would come in and say, "I really want this book," and I would know perfectly well there was a pallet of it 10 feet away, and I had to turn them away. Randy Ray says the stranger beside me is definitely worth reading. Okay, well, yeah, It'll be on the top of the list, definitely. I am as well read on Jack the Ripper as it is possible for a person to be, but all the other serial killers? Oh my. Oh my. Choco says Jack Edwards. Uh, oh, I think that might be in reference. I was mentioning uh, other kinds of booktubers. It could be. That reading guy says, I still doubt the existence of David Murphy. You and me both. A View from the Bar is back. For what movie with time have you had the most dramatic reappraisal? Something that, with years passing, you came to love or hate way more than you did at first. So we're not happy with either the subject of serial killers or the subject of booktube and what it means to you. Is that the reason for the ostentatious repositioning of other subjects that aren't connected to either one of those two? I would have to give this movie reappraisal thing quite some thought. I would have to do that. Oh, I can't think about movies at all at the moment, except Boy Kills World. So I could tell you what I think of that. I love it even more than I did the first time I watched it. I'd have to think. I'd have to ponder on that. It's not one of the subjects I'm pondering on. Medium John Silver says, I watch booktube videos to raise my interest in various books, mostly MKV's recommendations, also because I like the personalities. Kite says, I just like documenting my thoughts on what I've read while keeping my editing skills sharp. I read for enjoyment of reading. Jasper says, the people I watch on BookTube end up as voices in my head reading alongside me. Is that true? And if so, is that okay with you? Jared Henderson is here. I watch because I enjoy listening to people talk about things about which they are passionate. I also get a lot of books from my to read list. When I come for wine and calzones, I'm bringing my silver play button so you can display it in your background like a true influencer. I will never get such a button. Does YouTube actually ask you to display it, or is that just so incredibly universal because people are proud of it? Uh, Tolstoy 111. Hi, Steve. Do you like Olaf Stapleton? Again, with people not being quite interested in the two subjects on the table. I would have thought they were interesting enough to interest anyone, serial killers and booktube. I do not particularly like Olaf Stapleton. Rhonda Cooper says, I don't like choppy edited videos. I'd rather see videos like you do. Uh, it is honest. Well, the spastic edited videos, sure, where the editing is part of like a roller coaster ride. That I can understand. There are plenty of booktube channels that I watch that do discrete little neatening edits here and there to round off, to cut out the dead weight, the dead air, all that sort of. There's never going to be any dead air in one of my videos. And those I don't so much mind. A View from the Bar. I think consistency is a factor. Daily podcasts, the few, generate gargantuanly higher numbers than the twice weeklies. If folks make you part of their daily routine, you become comfort viewing. Consistency. Yeah, that doesn't actually speak to the subject, but still, it is interesting. And I wonder if smaller booktube channels that don't want to be small don't realize that. That okay, I've got to. I mean, I understand it completely. They're in lockstep with each other. But if you've got a small channel, let's say you've got 30 subscribers, and you really like 300 subscribers, uh, but you only make one video every 10 days, maybe they don't get that. Maybe they don't realize that. But then again, if you only have 33 subscribers, maybe you don't want, maybe they don't have the motivation to make more than that. I think the motivation really has to come from somewhere else than the metrics. That reading guy, I'm still tense with my friends. I don't believe that. Monet Doyle says, hello, Steve. I wish there were more booktubers who talk about romance books. But there are plenty, as I mentioned. There are dozens and dozens. There are more people who talk about romance books on YouTube than talk about mystery books, for instance. Uh, Medium John Silver, and of course, I watch Books of the Week for belly laughs and for the Bratwurst Queen. Yes, we had quite a broady episode this time. I need to line up my picks for next week and get those over right away. Sam Beveridge. The chat jumped. Let's go back to Sam Beveridge. Let's see what Sam Beveridge has to say. Uh, oh my God, there's a lot of chat. I guess you people didn't get the memo about quitting at 10 past the hour. Uh, let's see. All the way back to. Look, I'm glad I remember the name, so I don't have to. Uh, uh, Sam Beveridge. There we go. Why are my comments being censored? They are not. Unless BookTube is reaching into my live stream in order to censor. I'm certainly not doing it. Wouldn't know how to do it. Wouldn't do it if I wanted to, even if I did know. But I can't imagine that YouTube is censoring your comments. So they'd censor you if you were making a comment that actually some nebulous, you know, channel crawler out there didn't like. They'd nuke you from the chat. They wouldn't nuke just one comment, I would think. Jess says BookTube isn't going anywhere anytime soon. I don't agree. What profit do we make for YouTube? A minuscule thing. And we drag, is the minuscule profit that we make for them, us, the unmonetized chatty channels that are not professional, Olive and Ollie will survive any new criteria. They make great content that YouTube could like as much as ordinary people do. But this channel, channels like this, no. At what point are we costing them money rather than just making them money? Because it, we're using up their bandwidth. Their server farms are supporting us. That costs money. Choco says, "Hi, Frida." She's right here. She has she has temporarily pinned my hand. She often does that. My hand is pinned, so I only have the one hand to use. View from the bar. In the 21st century, Robin Williams got more people saying "Hey, Mork" than anything else. His explanation: big screen, you're a star. TV, your family, you're in their living room. Consistency equals fam. Uh, okay, all right. Hey, Mork got more people saying "Hey, Mork" than anything else. I doubt it. I doubt that more people ever said that than said, for instance, "Do you feel lucky, punk?" Or started calling people pilgrim. But I guess why would Robin Williams suddenly be right on this one subject as opposed to anything else he ever opened his yap about? Gola Moadib says BookTube replaces internet forums to discuss nerdy subjects. Ooh, that is interesting. I remember internet forums. I remember all kinds of them. I'm sure they still exist, but I think you might be right. Something about, I mean, you've got the added benefit of the personal element there. Uh, View from the bar, consistency. Okay, well, no need to correct typos. I know what you mean. Monet Dola says, I don't see many booktubers talking romance books or even recommending any of them. You might need to get out more. They are out there. Lots and lots. There's a whole romance channel ecosystem. Tolstoy 111, while I'm at it, do you like your Huismanis? Well, you aren't at it, or you are at it, but you're at it absolutely alone. No one else is at it. I don't particularly like Quizmas. No. Alex Williams, I missed last week in BookTube more to see if Steve causes another mass BookTuber meltdown. Well, Steve doesn't want to do that. Steve doesn't want to do that. That was not a pleasant weekend of being canceled. I was trending on YouTube in terms of people trying to cancel me. At the same time as trending on Reddit, people just liking something that I wrote. It was not a pleasant weekend. Uh, Jay Nicole, I watch different people for different reasons. I watch you and MJ and Garth for live streams. I watch Tangible Reads and Dusty Book Sniffer for sprints. Book Opinion for something I'm reading. I don't do book sprints on this channel. Obviously, for obvious reasons, it would be kind of funny. View from the bar. Plug here for Joyce Carol Oates' great NYRB essay about the then sudden explosion of serial killer true crime paperbacks in the 1990s. Okay. I guess the subject just does not interest you. J. Scott Phillips is here. I'm late again. Are we still talking about BookTube itself? We're talking about both. I opened with the subject of serial killers, which is not in the video title. Uh, uh, I opened with the subject of serial killers and what people think of them. Has anyone had any tangential connection to a serial killer? Do you read about them? But then we moved on. We segued to talking about BookTube itself and what it is for you. What is it for you? Whether you are in the position of someone who makes BookTube videos, or whether you're just in the position of someone who watches them. What is this weird thing that we're doing? I had cause to ask this question earlier today, and I have no easy answer. I have no clear answer. Richard Reads is here. I got a lot of good booktubers here. Can Vermonters be dude bros? Probably not, alas. No, I think Vermonters would scare the crap out of dude bros. Daniel's Bibliophage is here. Oh, I stumbled upon a live stream. What a pleasant surprise. We've got more and more good booktubers here. Quaint and Curious Volumes is here. Good Lord. BookTube is where I keep up with the Steve Donahue extended universe. there is no Steve Donahue extended universe. An STDU? Now, Jess says, J. Scott Phillips, we are talking about serial killers and booktube. Yes. Hopefully, they are two separate subjects. Quaint Curry as well as I'm trying to make uncomfortable on camera into a personal brand. Doing a pretty good job there, I'd say. Although there are some people, even in this chat, who have you beat going and coming. I do not understand that myself. I guess because I am an incredibly loquacious ham, but I do not understand it myself. Well, okay, I no sooner use the phrase incredibly loquacious ham than Randy Ray returns. Okay, if Joe Rogan is making 2 million a week, I'm getting headphones. Yeah. Well, you have to do more than that. You would have to do more than that. In fact, in your case and in most people's cases, in order to even come close to simulating his popularity, you would have to not only get non-functioning, ostentatious headphones, but also take a ball peen hammer to the head a few times. I don't think that'd be worth it. Jay Nicole says, by the way, I miss Jenny Parks. Hi, if you're watching and not commenting. Jasper says, I think the most modern true crime is exploitative compared to historical writing. A few years ago, near me, some documentary makers upset a lot of people and witnesses by trying to make a film. Oh, I agree completely. Jasper and I are on the same page tonight. Unlike when he's wrong, when he's disagreeing with me. I agree completely. Oh my God. Some of the true crime documentaries that I have seen are so inherently insulting. They don't think they are. They think they're just being jazzy. Probably getting a lot of the stupid hyperactive camera angles from CSI. That made a big impact on a lot of people. That show made a big impact on a lot of people. But you're not a TV show. If you're making a documentary about someone who killed people, you're being really insulting to treat it that way. Kevin JN says, Steve, you should interview Mike Tyson and Jake Paul. It would be BroTube gold. Mike Tyson, I have a couple of legitimate questions for. I would never interview Jake or Logan Paul. Never in a million years. I don't want to get anywhere near their orbit. I don't want to have anything to do with them. Mike Tyson might have bitten someone's ear off, but the Paul brothers are genuinely evil. I wouldn't want any connection with them at all. I'm not like the so-called bread tubers, the so-called leftist ally YouTubers who will spend a year, like Lance at the Surfs, they'll spend a year calling someone like Tim Pool an unmitigated, unreconstructed Nazi monster who is bent on the genocide of gay people. But then you get an invitation to go to the compound and shoot some episodes with Tim Pool, you do it. And what's the line that you use to justify your horrendously hypocritical actions? Well, if I can even reach one person of a regular viewer with some common sense, I'll do that. What an absolute, not only a transparent lie, but a perfect demonstration of what these people think of their viewers. That you would think that anyone would be dumb enough to buy that. Sure, you call this beanie monster a Nazi for a year, but the minute you get a chance to boost your brand by going and cozying up with him in his compound, you do it. Even though Lance had to know that there was a non-zero chance of him not making it out alive. That's how much the views mean to him. Anyway, unlike him, I will not call someone a monster and then share any kind of screen time. Mystery and Mayhem, but I've got a lot of great booktubers here. Are we making a connection between booktubers and serial killers? No, I hope not. No, except your connection with the subject and also, I guess, the books. I've had a lot of upvotes here, to use the YouTube terminology, for The Stranger Beside Me, the Ted Bundy book by Ann Rule. So that'll have to go on the hopper. NP Hunt, Harold Shipman prescribed eardrops to my little brother. I also used to walk to work past the sites where Amir Hindley's house was before it was torn down. Good Lord. Okay, well, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Direct personal connection. Amazing. The Mild Rumpus is here. I've got all the great booktubers here. The average person walks past 36 murders in their lifetime. Now, why do you? What on earth? Is that true? Or is that a factoid you learned from Google right alongside the average person swallows an average of 7 spiders in their sleep in their lifetime? How do you know that? Tyler says, true crime doesn't really bother me. I just find it very boring. Behind the lurid thrill, it's also prototypical. That's an unusual reaction. I've heard a lot in the last week or two. I've heard a lot of reactions to true crime from a lot of people, but not that one. Boring seems to be the last thing anybody wants to call it. That's interesting. Sean G says, just saw Iran missile hit U.S. base. Yeah, oh, yeah. Omid was talking about that earlier in the live stream. This is what could trigger this to an international stage. Right now, it hasn't been. It should be, not only morally, but also legally. A whole bunch of the watching nations signed the Genocide Pact, which legally obliges them not just not to commit genocide, but to stop genocide anywhere they know it's happening. But even though that's true, this has been very localized. The far right government of Israel has decided to eliminate all living Palestinians under the pretext of eliminating Hamas. And the rest of the world has been content to be outraged, but to watch it happen. And a few prognosticators, including a couple of people that I watch on YouTube, were saying the one thing that needs to happen for this to catch fire and go international would be the involvement of a big Arab nation nearby. So this missile, the fact that Iran is launching missiles is a very, very bad sign. It could mean that by this being Saturday night, it could be that by next Saturday night, we're all living in a completely different world. Uh, Scotty is back. Oh, why are we talking about serial killers? Is there one in our midst amongst BookTube itself? I don't think so. No, no. I mean, obviously, we all have our suspicions of Micah Cummins. It's always the clean cut, nice ones. But no, I realized belatedly once I started the Stevestream that it was a bad juxtaposition. I was not meaning to draw any connection between the two. There were two different subjects that I was interested in. I'm interested in both, but separately from each other. And as a result, I'm getting neither. Richard Reed says that will be bad for Iran. Well, Iran's not acting on its own. Iran's acting with a much bigger partner, a silent partner. It'd be bad for everybody. If that happened, it'd be bad for everybody. Randy Ray is back. I would definitely tune in to watch Steve interview Mike Tyson. He would be my first choice or my 10th. There are a whole bunch of people I would want to interview instead, including a whole bunch of booktubers. I haven't done a whole lot of that in a while, and I should. I really should. I should be doing a conversation with Randy. I should have another conversation with Mark. Scotty's out there. I should do conversations with him. Uh, anyway, Tolstoy 111. The distinction between serial killers and dictators is important. When people are discussing mass shootings, too many blue-haired types will cite Wounded Knee. War crimes are not mass shootings. I agree. I agree. There's a world of difference. I'm talking about the normal woof of society. Again, since I've got that great ant colony book on the brain, imagine, and people have seen this does happen. People, you're watching the massive activity of a giant ant colony every once in a blue moon, probably intriguingly enough at about the same frequency that happens in humans. Every once in a blue moon you'll be watching the streams of those worker ants, and one of those worker ants will suddenly start attacking the ants around it. Now the ants around it act shocked. They then make a perimeter, and then they kill the worker ant that has malfunctioned. But for a while, for a few seconds, for a few minutes, that little worker ant is a serial killer. And I'm not going, if I'm going to get the project that I think I'm going to get, it's going to be about one particular case or at most one particular area. But I'm naturally thinking meta thoughts. I want to know why serial killers, for instance, have decreased in number, in frequency, in severity. I want to know what people think about them. I want to know what this phenomenon is, which is so different from normal psychopathy. But J. Scott Phillips is back. Does Randy Ray count as a serial killer? I understand that he's a lady killer. No, no, I know for a fact that Randy not only doesn't leave his lady friends dead, he also doesn't somehow manage to leave them unhappy. They all like him. I've almost never met anybody that was like that. That reading guy says 30 minutes into the stream and we are hovering around 100 people. Yesterday we topped maybe 70 people at once. Was that true? Which number do I look at? I'm seeing 54. Grandpa Simpson is not knowing what number to look at, but I'm mainly concerned with the subjects. I'm not hearing a lot about BookTube. Clearly, I need to make a separate stream when I'm not linking it with serial killers. That's probably. Jasper says I suspect the Spaminator and Mark Richardson are serial killers at times. I don't know how to speak for the Spaminator, but Mark would be the one who's not only is the short hairs would prickle up at an apparently harmless stranger, but that he would be right. He's the one who would be right if he had to do it. He's the one who, if you showed him, you know, a gigantic room, uh, well, I don't know, the floor of Grand Central Station at rush hour. He's the one who I think would pick out a serial killer first, but not be one. No. Andy Gaia says BTK is the scariest one for me because he was so methodical. Hearing about him calmly talking to the judge in his case about the horrible things he did was scary. It was as if he was describing a job. You know, it's amazing that you say that because BTK, I had that exact same thought when I was going over him. I need to go into enormous amounts of detail on all of the marquee name figures and probably lots of the minor ones as well. But when I was going into detail on him, that thought came to me over and over again is that he really does sound, when you're looking at the case and hearing all reading all the stuff about it, he really is the one who more than almost any other makes it sound like a job. I've got this place that I go to work. I've got these people that I know. I've got this food to buy, and also, I gotta get you out of the car because I gotta kill somebody. Uh, and just keep going like that. Not only dispassionate, but no sense of the scope or drama of it at all. Very, very disturbing. I agree. Richardson Reed says, I killed my cereal this morning. Randy Ray is back. Lady killer isn't legal, J. Scott Phillips. I prefer to look at myself as adventurer. Uh, FI says, I comfort watch BookTube. I felt guilty unfollowing because of an annoying, try-hard presentation style or high-pitched voice. But when my feed is filled with graphics laden, highly filtered, ... What's that phrase you used that was great? Try-hard presentation style. Yeah. Yeah. There's almost nothing that's exhausting more than that. Is the try hard presentation style. I know exactly what you mean when you say that, and I don't like to unfollow people because it takes just no effort at all to scroll right past them. So I tend to do that. The only people that I've really unfollowed in my time on BookTube have been people who made videos personally attacking me. Those I unfollow, but the rest I don't. But I know exactly what you mean. And you don't get that in the 200 or 300 channels that I'm thinking of for this little area of BookTube. You don't get that. You don't get the try hard presentation style. And if you do get something that is that high energy, you know to pay attention to it, not to ignore it, right? I mean, what if? Imagine that you were watching, well, you name it, you name it, Vin at Revenant Reads, the Book Chat with Pat, whoever it is, me even. One of these booktubers that you watch that's just an ordinary person talking to you about books, if one of them got on camera and was suddenly high energy about this book, well, you would pay more attention, not less, because it would be genuine. But I know exactly that the graphics laden, highly filtered. I know exactly what you mean. Anti Gaia is calling Mark Richardson a silly goose. Okay. Thumbnail. Fi says thumbnails. It's more than an irritation than a comfort. And if booktubers are arrogant or sarcastic to their commentators, that's a big turnoff. I hope you're making an exception for me. I'd like to think that the people who've been around this channel long enough know that when I'm being arrogant and sarcastic and poking fun at people, it's all meant in complete glowing affection. It is not real. It's all meant in complete affection. Also, pronouns in bios are an immediate unfollow. I haven't gone quite so far as some people on Twitter, back when I was on Twitter, as to that kind of a scorched earth policy. But pronouns in bio is when you don't have to have them there. BookTube doesn't require it. Lots of industry does. For instance, all the publicists that email me all day long all have pronouns in their bio because their publisher requires them to put it there. If they're there in a place where they're not required, yeah, I don't know about immediate unfollow, but it really gives me pause. Brandon H uses just a question mark. No idea what that means. Andrew McDonald says, did you ever enjoy any of the comics analysis offered by the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel? I did. That's another subject that's been on my mind for the last week. I haven't mentioned it on my channel, but obviously because my channel is not a reaction channel or a comics channel, except for Wednesdays when I do Epic Comic Book Wednesday with Michael K. Vaughan, and we're not going to talk about comic book news and the fact that there was a murder. Don't be, if you're wondering what cartoonist kayfabe is and you just happen to lightly Google it and you see suicide, don't be fooled. It was not a suicide. It was a murder, and the murderers were identified by the victim. So the many comics reaction channels, all the way from the cheerleaders to the neck-bearded alt-right quasi-fascists, the fact that this has hit them all the same, that this changes comics, this changes the comics industry. The fact that, as Comics Matter put it, they kill now. They kill people now. How on earth are you supposed to? How are you supposed to smile if they're promoting the next Hellfire Gala if you know that they kill people they don't like? Yeah, but yes, I did like some of the analysis that was offered on that channel. J. Scott Phillips is here. That's good to hear. Randy Ray, the literate Texan, but I will hold it up. Will it hold up in court? That reading, guys, is there any print evidence of you savaging John Updike? Me wanting. I'm sure there is. I'm sure there. Well, maybe not. I should say I'm sure there is. Because this would all have been pre-internet, and it would have been once upon a time. Some of you will be old enough to remember this. Once upon a time, every city in America had its own newspaper, often two individual newspapers. They weren't grabbing copy. They weren't running their own local version of the Trib. They had their own paper. And I wrote for a lot of those papers. They were always hungry for content. And I wrote a lot of book reviews all across the Midwest, the lower Midwest, for a lot of those papers that have gone. A pipe burst, building burns down, snowstorm that caves in the roof or whatnot. No microfiche, just files and files of old newspapers. Certainly nothing on the internet. So uh, if I can find it, I will try to post it. Up Down says, "Hello, Steve. Spring has shown its face in Nottingham. It was pretty temperate today. Walking around with no jacket, pretty nice." Sam says, "Facts. I have reason to believe Randy Ray is my dad." Wow, this turning salacious, but still very little talk on either serial killers or what BookTube is to you. I'll make a separate stream where I decouple the two. Jasper says, "I've met people who seem affable at first until I see them do something. Once a guy who seemed very normal and likable showed me a video of a mouse being tortured, and I never went near him again." Yeah, yeah, that I you wonder when someone does that, they're not only trying to shock you, they're also trying to enlist you. And what's the matter, Ravi? You going to go up on your perch? Oh, you are. There we go. Uh, I mean, something like that of a mouse being tortured. That's fairly obvious. But I wonder about the less obvious stuff. Uh, Fi says, regarding AI, some publishers are using AI in translated fiction. That has to be a problem. Well, if it's a problem, it'll be a problem that'll be solved in the marketplace, right? If AI typically does a very bad job at translating. If some publisher decides we're just going to do a new translation of Cervantes and we're going to use an AI to save money and we're not going to have a human involved at all, well, the result won't sell or will be savaged or both. Uh, Jess says, "Jasper Antonelli, you did the right thing by staying away from him." Kevin JN says, "Will you be doing a reread of Executioner's Song by one of your favorite authors, Norman Mailer?" I think I will. I'm able mostly to skip most of the fiction. The nonfiction I don't see that I can skip. Although I get the impression that aside from a handful, literally two or three authors only, there's precious little that's good that's been written. Precious few good studies that have been written. Uh, that aren't sensationalistic. And I'm not 100% blaming the author because I would imagine that if you write a book like that and you take the proposal to your agent, they're going to say, "No, it can't be. What is this? A columns of statistics? You need to spice this up." Uh, NP Hunt says, "Is the project about a more general subject or one specific killer, like Israel Keys, for example?" I don't. I don't know that it's going to be a project. I don't know that it's going to be yet another summer. It seems like my summers are cursed, and I know why. It's because the deadlines for a lot of these projects are in the fall. But if it's the kind of project that I am suspecting, then I think it will be one particular serial killer, and that will be gruesome, absolutely gruesome. But I'm not sure that that would be more gruesome than if it's a whole bunch. So if I have a say in the matter, and I might not get a say in the matter, I would like to broaden the scope. I'd like to make a serious study. But there's one particular. It's not Israel Keys. There's one particular serial killer that I've actually asked a couple of you about in private. That could end up being the focus of my summer, in which case I'm going to need Garbagas so bad. A view from the bar is bad. Guy in Little Havana attacked me. Champagne bottle. Immediately regret because I'd had that feeling about this guy, but trotted around him on the sidewalk. He kicked my feet out, attacked trust little hairs. When did this happen? Are you all right? Did people intervene? Were you able to protect yourself? Uh, but the point I was trying to make is that most people, the little hairs don't go up. They don't get that sense. Evil Joshua says, I was in elementary school in DC area when the sniper was at large. We had to duck behind a line of cars on the way to school bus as a precaution. Oh my God. Hannah's book says, I was only coy about the serial killer because I don't remember who it was. Probably 1978 or so. Yeah, there would have been 100 serial killers in 1978. Back then in the South, most people were murdered by their brothers. Pearl Harper says, Hi, Steve. The best book regarding true crime I have read is Mikhail Gilmore's book, Shot in the Heart, about his brother Gary and their family. Okay. Really? All right. Well, that you know that means a lot to me. So I will make a mental note of that. I think I was I'm sounding ambivalent because I was just sort of assuming that I was going to avoid family memoirs. But you're saying it was good. So I guess I'll have to include some of them then. I know there've been quite a few. Auntie Gaia says Devil in the White City is a fun serial killer book. Yeah, I don't want the fun kind. I agree. I enjoyed it, but I want if I can, I want serious studies. I don't get the impression that there are many serious studies out there, but maybe I'm missing a whole bunch of them. That could easily be true. Jasper says, "What do you think of Charles Leechmere Cross as Jack the Ripper's suspect? It's all circumstantial and probably not real, but I find it super fascinating. He is one of the more fascinating possibilities." Ryan says Hannibal must be top fictional killer for incompetent and charming Tom Ripley. Zombie by George Gallows felt so real and especially disturbing. Any recommendations, Steve? Well, of course, I recommend the Hannibal Lecter books. I think they're terrific. Hannah's books is consoling. Eva Josu, heartbreaking. I agree. That'll leave a mark on you. Jay Nicole says I recommend The Sociopath Next Door. Well, I read The Sociopath Next Door, but that isn't. I mean, I liked it, but it isn't quite what I'm talking about. Uh, Ryan says Lou Ford in The Killer Inside Me. Haven't read it. I'll be jotting all of these things down. That reading, guys, imagine having Steve's voice inside your head as you read. I wouldn't like that at all. Gola Muad'Dib says, I like watching BookTube to nerd out over my favorite books with other people. So is it a huge, uh, excuse me, oh, the chat jumped. Okay, let's go back to where you were. So does that mean that the BookTube channels that don't nerd out about your favorite books are of less interest? You mentioned that nerding out about your favorite books is one of the reasons that you love BookTube. Does that mean uh, that the ones that don't talk about your favorite stuff aren't the things you watch? View from the bar. Speaking of serial killers, what's your forecast for Ted Cruz's career? We're still on the subject of you being attacked by a guy. Oh, uh, right? It's, uh, uh, Ted Cruz's career is too painful a subject for me because of my beloved Beto. Jasper says it can be unnerving to feel like I have people looking over my shoulder while reading, but it's worth it. That reading guy says if daily podcasts generate lots of revenue, what about booktubers who post videos daily? What about 5? Should I do a podcast every day? Wouldn't that be fun? Jared Henderson says YouTube doesn't ask us to display the button. I don't think I ever have actually. I think people show it off because they're proud of their success. I bet that's true. Jess says currently I am 488 subscribers. I can't stick to a schedule because I work a full-time job. Yeah, I don't know how the people who have a full-time job or a full slate of classes, I don't know how they do this. Or for instance, well, Randy Ray has been in the chat. He's dealing with chemo. How does he make videos? Randy Ray is here. Why do I YouTube? I can't decide if it's more to do with the fame or the riches. Oh, who am I kidding? We all know I'm just here to meet women. Richard, you've got to save your strength, young man. Richard Reeds is back. You've been saying BookTube is doomed for years. Just a few years. And I believe it. Doom can be slow. Uh, it just seems to me that the model here is at odds with the product. And that is only ever resolved one way. Dorothy Satterfield is here. Hi, Steve. I watch BookTube to hear talk about my favorite books and writers and find out about books and writers I've never heard of. Andy Guy says, honestly, I'm more afraid of the situation in the Middle East than I am about serial killers. Well, I wasn't meaning to draw a comparison between the two. The situation in the Middle East has today got 1,000 times worse. I don't think it's penetrating people's consciousness in a way that, for instance, a long, long time ago, most of you will have to Google the name Walter Cronkite, but a long, long time ago, you read the newspaper in the morning, and when you wanted to know what had happened during the day that was important, that everybody should know, you tuned in at night at 6 to watch Walter Cronkite, and he would tell you. In half an hour, he would tell you. That doesn't exist anymore. That there's no equivalent of that. So I don't think that a lot of people, especially in the United States, realize that we could be on the brink of a major war. Uh, Ryan Smallwood says, in response to the person asking about censored comments, YouTube has filters that automatically block comments it thinks might spam, something else it wants to keep off. So would that be something like a link, like a hot link, or something like that? Is it possible that the earlier person, the person who was mentioning that, was trying to post links? Uh, Jasper Antonelli says the Middle Eastern escalating in real time. It all seems so unnecessary. Well. You're absolutely right. It's escalating in real time. I am sure that there have been major developments just while I've been doing this live stream that I'm not paying, that I haven't seen. Um, but yeah, well, all war is unnecessary. It's. I was hoping a horrible hope. I hated hoping it when I was hoping it. I was hoping that if this was just going to keep going, Israel is just going to raise Gaza, that it would stay regional. I was at least hoping that because even there, it's an enormous tragedy, but it's not. It doesn't have the potential to expand into the Gulf. Uh, but anyway, Tobin Moffat says regarding the Middle East, yeah, I was thinking of asking for predictions on exactly how it will play out. My predictions would be outdated. I haven't been watching the news while I've been chatting with all of you wonderful people about booktubers and serial killers. Michael Lombardo, you know the old saying, "I got a guy," when referring to the expert in the particular field, such as fiction, a car, or what the hot stock is. That's what Steve is for books and comics and politics. Oh, I'd be incredibly flattered if any of that were true, but I don't think it is. I think you're all watching for freedom. Uh, Jasper Antonelli, nothing ever happens except when it does. Yeah. Although, Michael Lombardo, I, one part of that it would be nice if it were true is that I've got a guy for books. It would be an honor to be that guy, me to be that guy. I've read more than anybody else. I've been doing this a lot longer. I've been connected in the critical world for a very long time. I remember it all. I haven't lost a step yet. I haven't had a switch defuse or whatnot. There are. I know you were kidding, but still, it'd be a nice idea. Uh, View from the bar. I swear I get excited about one thing, jot a bunch of remarks. They unfold over 10 minutes and sound unhinged. Swear I'm interested in the topic. Seriously, sound unhinged all the time. Yes. Tolstoy 111. I've seen booktubers start well because they were English majors talking about Shakespeare and Milton classes they were taking. Then they graduate and morph into YA channels. It's depressing. Yeah, they morph into YA channels or they graduate and stop reading. Uh, because school makes the time for reading. When you're in school and you're majoring in something, school makes the time. And a lot of people, when they do that, they do it for grade school, they do it especially for high school, then they do it for college, and they don't realize that when you're not in school, you have to make the time yourself, and it won't just happen on its own. Uh, let's see here. DT says, I've lessened my booktube viewing since this one guy spams so many videos I can't keep up. I assume you're referring to Bo of the Fifth Column. Hannah's Books is blushing in response to Quaint and Curious Volumes. Jess Bookgirl TV says Cold Case with Catherine Morris and Criminal Minds with Joe Montagno are great shows. Uh, Criminal Minds. That's ringing a bell. Cold Case, I don't think I know. But Criminal Minds is ringing a bell. I think Joe Montagna is the one you're thinking of, Fat Tony. But I think that's the one I'm thinking of. Is that what? Uh, oh God. I'm picturing the cast, but I don't know any of their names. There was a thin, reedy nerd. It was an absolutely gorgeous action hero guy, bigger than everybody else. There was a lab technician who got lots of great lines. I may remember that show. DT says, I watch a lot. It's not Boy Kills World, so I'm drawing a blank. DT says, I watch a lot of other YouTube, and I'm wondering what Steve undoubtedly makes of them. Yeah, but you can't turn the question back on me. I've barely scratched the surface of what BookTube is to all of you people. Uh, Beanie280, great watching from Ireland, Northern Ireland. Oh my, we're in Northern Ireland. Good Lord. Jasper says, I agree that true crime can be deadly boring. I have said this to a few people in real life to very angry reactions. A lot of people seem to like true crime. Maybe boring has too many negative connotations for the victims themselves. Yeah, yeah, they could be thinking that isn't that a sociopathic response on your part to think this is boring? Mild rumpus. Robert Durst was always eating at Whataburger when I was living in Galveston, Texas. Sometimes he would be in drag as a form of disguise, but everyone knew it was him. Disturbing on a number of levels. Mystery and mayhem. I'm not a huge fan of true crime shows or books. That just sticks with me. Jack the Ripper, on the other hand, I'm fascinated with. Uh, Hannah's book says NaNoWriMo, the BookTube meetup murders. And it's, Gandhi Angle says, just jumping in. Hello, all. Hello. Jess says, has anyone read The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger? If so, is it a banned book? Why would The Time Traveler's Wife be a banned book? I know there must be a reason. A normal person can't ever guess the reason because the reasons are always so dumb. Have you seen the video, the movie version of Time Traveler's Wife? Have you watched it at all with Theo James in the lead? I wonder what you'd make of it if you haven't seen it. Randy Ray says, I'm ready for another conversation. Well, I'm not. It's my stream. I've got two subjects on the table here, and they're barely getting touched. That reading guy says, you need to do an interview with Jason Harrigan. Now, that would be nice. That'd be very nice. Nice if Jason had a nice active channel. Imagine a video every 4 days from Jason. Vivian says, I like BookTube because I have no one to discuss books with and to hear sincere people talk about books they've read. I have found so many recommendations as well as nonfiction subjects new to me. Okay, but you're okay. Well, that's great, and that tells me why you're watching. But what does that do for? How does that reflect itself in your actual practice? Do you watch BookTube every day? Do you have a subscription feed with lots of channels in it? And obviously, if you have that, maybe you feel differently about different channels. Ryan says 115 viewers, 16.5 subs. Steve, you are getting too popular. How? That's not popular in YouTube terms, but I also don't know how. I have no idea. Richard Reed says Steve would have to call my agent, Jason Harrigan. Dorothy Satterfield, where did this term blue-haired type come from? Uh, it's a stereotype of the most strident, shrill, and obviously grifter social justice warriors, so-called SJWs, all of whom uh, seem to fit a physical stereotype. They have livestock metal rings in their noses, and they dye their hair blue. Usually have the mental illness haircut, where they've got hair on the top, but the sides are shaved right to the skin. Uh, so many of them have that identical look to express their individuality that it just became a thumbnail that a whole bunch of people use. Blue hair has become synonymous with you're going to have pronouns and a Ukraine flag in your bio. You're going to hate everybody. You're not going to have any friends, only allies, et cetera, et cetera. The worst stereotype of the genre. Uh, Trish Bovell, an elementary school classmate of mine, was on death row for a multiple murder, but was commuted when the Illinois governor ended executions before he went to federal prison for racketeering and bribery. Multiple murder, though, but by multiple murder, you don't mean a serial killer. You mean he killed a number of people, which is not the same thing, right? I'm assuming you would say he was a serial killer if he were. NP Hunt says, my dad was a police constable for his whole career, and he and my mom both love true crime and crime fiction, books, movies, TV shows, documentaries, literally anything to do with crime. How interesting. I wonder if there's a higher percentage of police who like this stuff. Uh, the mild rumpus says, the BTK survivor lived in my grandfather's neighborhood. Oh, no kidding. No kidding. Oh my. Yeah, that survivor story is amazing. Just amazing. Kevin JN says Sasquatch Sunset is film gold for you, Steve. Future film obsession. I only have one film obsession right now. It's not going anywhere. Not going. Boy Kills World is not going anywhere. Not even for Sasquatch. Jasper says, I used to watch Cartoonist Kayfabe. I didn't know anything happened. Yeah, one of Ed Piskor, one half of Cartoonist Kayfabe was murdered last week by SJWs. by comics industry SJWs. Uh, so again, if you glance at the news, you will hear that he killed himself, but he left a suicide note that said he was murdered, that he did not want to kill himself, and he identifies his murderers, all of whom are working in the industry. So he killed himself, so there's no legality that can touch them, but they are nevertheless completely black letter law murderers. And that changes the comic book industry. What are you supposed to do if the new writer for Immortal X-Men has a body count? It kills people that she doesn't like. Well, you're not going to get that book. Or anyway, yeah, something did happen. Uh, Mystery Mayhem says, I agree with you regarding Ed Piskor's murder. Waiting patiently for this kind of cancel culture to run its course. Very sad and frustrating. I don't see why you would think it is going to run its course. They've killed someone. They killed a guy, and he admitted it. He identified his killers. They're not going to get fired. They're going to get high-profile jobs until the comic industry that they killed actually dies, in which case no one will have a job. But until then, their employers aren't firing them at all. There's no kind of action is being taken against them. They aren't having their convention appearances canceled. They aren't being shunned from speaking events or forums of any kind. Uh, so if since all of that is true, and all of that is true, there's now been enough time so that if there were going to be a reaction against these killers, it would have happened. Which means that this is its course. It's not going to run its course. This is what it's going to be until something else supplants it. Uh, Colin, what did you think of Devil's Chessboard by David Talbot? I kind of liked it. That reading guy, we have a few examples in BookTube past with people who we knew and liked on camera were not what they seemed. Not to name any names. I know. I know. Since I've been reading on this subject, I've been thinking of that, not to name any names, a lot, and thinking about when that all happened. And a friend of mine who deals with these monsters professionally calmed my. I was outraged. I was more outraged than I appeared on camera. Outraged and also really weirded out. It takes a lot to do that to me. I was really weirded out. And an old friend of mine, uh, who I said she's been working with, in this realm. She's dealt with the hard edges of the real world and the legal and criminal courts for a long time. A lot of you thought I was talking about Britta. In this case, it was not Britta Bowler. But this friend of mine said, uh, you shouldn't beat yourself up. These creatures need to be inconspicuous. If they triggered your instincts, they know they will die. So they make sure not to trigger your instincts. For what it's worth, once I shared that insight with Britta, it lined up with her own experiences as well. So I felt a little bit comforted by that fact, but still, yeah, yeah. Uh, anyway, Vivian, I met someone who was so creepy, I left his BD party. He got a camera as a gift and became so obsessed with it that all I could think was that he will use it to take pictures of his victims. Well, that's the sort of thing I'm wondering about. Not only the books you read and whether or not the subject ever crosses your mind, but also how many of you have had visceral reactions like that, where you're in a place and it's not something you're thinking about at all, and suddenly you start thinking it. There's something wrong with this person, and I need to flee. Usually, it produces that kind of reaction. I wonder how widespread that is. Uh, Michael Lombardo says a few years ago, Gannett bought the local newspaper. Most of the content is now copy and pasted from their other properties. Hardly anything local anymore. Yeah, it's almost impossible to find local newspapers that don't simply buy their content, which is to the great detriment of the whole country. Uh, Not just local communities. The whole of the country suffers for that because of that. But once upon a time, you may be old enough to remember. Once upon a time, that wasn't true. Once upon a time, there were papers in every city. They were proud to do it. It was one of the first things they did. Uh, that reading guy. Ooh, the chat jumped. Where did that reading guy go? Can't miss this little pearl of wisdom, whatever it is. Let's find you. Let's find you. Oh God. Yes, here we go. For that major project, you could say no instead of being a soy boy cuck. Tell them you are looking into self-publishing instead. Well, technically I could do both, but unlike self-publishing, if this project happens, it might involve a little money, which would be good. Even though that money is not necessary to buy a 12.9-inch iPad, because one of you was kind enough to send me one, so I get to play around with a 12.9-inch iPad with a different cover. You eagle-eyed viewers will see this is a different cover. This is not the Logitech case. This is instead uh, the the Smart Folio keyboard. So you've got the cloth covered keys there, but most crucially, this also is not Bluetooth, but most crucially, it attaches to the back of the device as one huge magnet. So this is not detachable in any way. It's not coming off this thing at all. Well, that turns out to improve the experience quite a bit. Uh, Gandhi Angle says YouTube censored me, I think, for using the word dictator. It was in reference to the three-part PBS series Julius Caesar: The Making of a Dictator. Would they watch that carefully for one specific word? Michael Lombardi, did you watch slash enjoy Mr. Mercedes series with Brian Cox? It's all a blur. Everything before, during, and after Boy Kills World is all a blur. Hannah's books. If Steve's head is inside your head, that reading guy, as that reading guy says, is it subvocalizing? Is it subvocalizing with a particularly grating New England accent? Uh, let's see here. Jasper says Steve's voice in my head is more yelling and incoherent ranting than anything else. A Cedar Bridge Officina. Do you think Mom's works will ever make a comeback or continue to fade? I enjoyed a reread of Cakes and Ale and hope to read many of his novels this year. We're a little bit off both of our topics, but I mean, who reads him anymore? A couple of books maybe get put on advanced syllabus for a third year English literature degree in college, but no, I doubt it. I think he will just continue to fade. MP Hunt, a group of my friends have a running joke that I'm a serial killer because of my interest in true crime and crime fiction when I was younger. But they don't tend to be interested in that sort of thing. They don't tend to be interested in. They don't think most of them don't think of themselves as criminals, so they don't definitely don't want to be associated in anybody's mind with other criminals. Remember, you not remember. I don't imagine many people know this, but John Wayne Gacy gave a long interview in prison. And when he was compared in that interview to other famous serial killers, he adamantly rejected. No, the stuff that they read tends to be the stuff that they're going to do, which is even creepier. NP Hunt, we're from Manchester, so because of the canals, they call me Jack the Dipper. Gandhi Angle says the IDF announces our planes are in the air. Oh my God, headed where? Headed where? IDF is going to pause from killing Palestinians to what? Bomb Tehran? That could mean war by morning. Oy, okay, all right. Well, Scotty is back. Thank God. Speaking of Walter Cronkite, didn't Lil Abner have a bird known as Walter Cronkite? Crightingale? I think so. Yes, but you must remember Walter Cronkite, right? You're an old geezer. You must remember Walter Cronkite, and not just Walter Cronkite, but the world he represented. Where during the day, you're not plugged into anything. You're out you're making money, you're making calls, you're at work, you're at school. It's only at the end, you read the morning paper, and it's only at the end of the day that you want to know what happened during the day. And you want someone you trust to boil all that down to 1/2 hour. And no one was more trusted than Walter Cronkite. So there wasn't any partisanship. There wasn't any what kind of news am I going to get on this channel as opposed to on this channel. It was just when we're all done with our day, we're going to tune in to Walter Cronkite and find out what the day's news is. Uh, but anyway, Nietzschean wig. I'm officially addicted to Steve Donahue. Have been for the past 2 weeks. Watch you regularly during my week-long sojourn in the Low Countries. Did you really go to the Low Countries? Did you really go to the Low Countries? Where? It wasn't by any chance Rotterdam, was it? Tolstoy 111. I never hear Updike spoken of by younger literary types. He really is going the way of the dodo. Yes. Yes. As Steve predicted. And Steve predicted this 50 years ago when the literary types were all telling him he was out of his mind and that Updike was among the true immortals. And I said, nope. Bellow, Roth, Mailer, Updike, the minute they're dead, their books are going to start to get pulled from the shelves and die. And I was right. I might point out. They're all dead, so I can't crow to them, but I can crow to you. I was right. Richardson Reed says literary types. Anti Guy says the Iceman was an interesting one too. He killed for the mob, though. Yeah, I wouldn't be thinking about someone like the Iceman. I wouldn't be thinking I wouldn't be thinking about anyone who does something as any kind of a job. The BTK killer, would think of it that way, but it wasn't a job. It was an obscene moral lapse. Something like the Iceman it wouldn't or Sammy the Bull Gravano or anything like that. People who are killing for employ, they might kill lots of people, but I don't view it as the same thing. Maybe I should, but I don't. Nietzschean Wig. I am now on the verge of finishing my Penguin Selected Poems by Lord Byron, which Steve has featured on this channel before. I just dragged my way through Sardanapalus. You can direct your comments to me instead of about me. You are in my stream, after all. Jess says Robert Durst was crazy. I think he was worse than O.J. Simpson. I'm reading some banned books for Reading This Life, 24 banned books challenge. I haven't seen the TV series Time Traveler's Wife. I heard it got canceled. It probably did get canceled, but I think you would find that it is surprisingly enjoyable. I think you would. Uh, Nietzsche and Wig is back. Is the 48 Laws of Power one of those? One of what? One of what? Hannah's Books. When I hear blue-haired, I still think of elderly ladies in the 1970s who, for some reason, all tinted their hair pale blue or lavender. Always makes me laugh. Yes, I always have that split screen myself. It's been hijacked in the 21st century to mean something else to a large swath of the public. But yeah, forever and ever, that was the only use that I ever heard of it. Stephen Bronstein says BTK is fascinating to me because he seemed to have some normal empathy mixed in with his personality and behavioral disorders. Yeah, he wasn't the only one. Uh, some of the most of the marquee serial killers in the United States and in the UK are marked by an absolutely machine-like lack of any kind of human empathy. But a couple of them do display it. They don't display it out in the wild, but once they're in captivity, they do. I mean, for instance, Jeffrey Dahmer would be another example of something like that. You don't know how much to believe it. Uh, Ryan says, Steve, do you have any serial killer fiction recommendations? Well, like I mentioned, Thomas Harris's Hannibal Lecter books they aren't. I would hesitate to call them serial killer fiction. They are terrific, absolutely terrific. There's also an older novel called By Reason of Insanity by an author named Stevens, Stevens. That's also really good. Very different kind of reading, but really, really good. Madman Gone Mad, identical look to express their individuality. Well, the shoe fits. Right? The bookish knitter is here. Good lord, all the great booktubers are here. Hello, I'm just in, and you are chatting killers right up my alley. Yes, one of the two. I brought up two subjects. I shouldn't have brought them up at the same stream because it looks like I'm linking them. First, I brought up serial killers. What connection do any of you have? Have you ever had a distant orbital connection with an actual serial killer? How interested are you in the subject in real life? Do you ever think about it, et cetera, et cetera? And also, I also brought up the subject of BookTube, of what BookTube is for everybody who watches it. What do they think of when they're doing it? And it's not working. I need to do a separate Steve stream on both of those things. Ryan says, besides Hannibal or the very popular ones, well, that would be it. The most of the ones that I know of are really bad. Dorothy Satterfield, thanks for explaining blue-haired. I thought it was meant as an insult to little old ladies. No, I love little old ladies. No, it has been co-opted in some circles by this new meaning. So there's the two things. Just like Hannah is always getting on my case because y'all has also been co-opted, very much co-opted. Whereas once upon a time, for a long time, it was just a very pleasant way to talk to people in the American South. It is no longer only that. You can still use it that way, but now you run the risk of people thinking you're using it in the other way that it's been co-opted for, the purely fascist way. That reading guy says maybe serial killer numbers have gone down because they are mostly living in dark basins as incels on 4chan. Comment was missed, but I want to know what you think. Uh, okay, well, but the whole point of one of the points of serial killers is that they have all the same impulses as the incels on 4chan. They have all the same impulses of the world's doing me wrong. I've got all these urges. I know they're not acceptable. I know they don't deserve the light of day. I know that people would be alarmed about me. The thing that separates a serial killer from those people is that they then act on it. So I guess would your point be that 4chan and sites like it are sublimating those impulses, and that's why they're not needing to act on them? So maybe along the same lines, you might say that that some serial killers see, the problem is that a lot of the most famous and infamous serial killers, a lot of the most effective ones, if effective isn't a horrible word to use in this circumstance, uh, would have scorned incels on 4chan, the equivalent of incels on 4chan. They were outgoing, seemingly successful, and gregarious people. So are you saying that the 4chan and sites like it are sublimating some of those urges, and that's why they're not going out and acting on them? Uh, Gandhi Angle says the HBO documentary Richard the Iceman Kurlinski is chilling. I haven't seen it. I'll have to watch it. I have to watch a lot of these things. Jess says Siva Bronstein, Radar, Gacy, Bundy, and Hurman all normal sides, but deep down they all had dark sides. Yeah, and a whole bunch of others too. I mean, you're naming some of. I can't help but think. I know this is easy hindsight. I can't help but think that I would have been suspicious of Gacy. I know that all the discussions of his case say that he was, very outgoing, very well liked, very popular man about town, and all that. Everything that I've ever seen, every photo, every witness interview, every friend interview, all made me think that he would have got my hackles up. Maybe not. I'm not, a basement full of dead bodies, but something really wrong here. This is all fake. But maybe not. Maybe that's just hindsight. Bottle Imp Books. I used to live next to a church where Peter Tobin had buried one of his victims, put her under the floorboards before the altar. Always depressed me walking past that place. Good Lord. J. Scott Phillips. The chat jumped as soon as I saw your name. We're going to go back to you. Uh, so we don't miss anything here. Uh, uh, okay, speaking of BookTube means to me, how about a blob watch? Okay, a blob watch is fine by me. And we don't need to use the smaller iPad because the larger iPad now has the Smart Folio keyboard case instead of that Logitech keyboard. This thing is attached. It's attached to the back of the iPad by one entire magnet. The entire thing back here is a magnet. Instead of a little pogo key at the bottom, the whole sheet is a magnet. So it's not going anywhere. Which is really nice. The one downside is that when you flip it all around to tablet mode, you are holding onto keys. But it's not quite as bad because the keys are cloth covered. So it's kind of like a solid sheet. But let's look at Blobwatch on the newest technology that I have, the brightest, cleanest technology that I have. Ooh, look at that. Okay, there was a system that I thought was going to be rain for the middle of the week, but it is gone. It has disappeared completely. So if we zoom out all the way, yeah, there's a little activity in your neck of the woods, Scotty, but not here. That's all gone for New England. That's that huge thing that's offshore. That was here yesterday. But now that's going out to sea, and there's nothing to replace. There's nothing to replace it. How interesting. Okay, so and you see with this thing, there's no popping anything off or fiddling with it. I just close it, and it works just fine. So that's great. Uh, Vivian says I sub to various channels and choose which ones to watch according to the subject they are covering that day, and if my mood coincides with their personality. I watch all of yours though. Oh my, that's nice. Andrew says my father was a policeman. He had no time for true crime in any medium. The closest he got was reading Serpico. Richardson reads, my hometown has 3K, has two newspapers when I was a boy in the early 1960s, none now. Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm talking about here. Dorothy Satterfield, I started watching Steve's channel because one of his March of the Penguins videos showed up on my feed. I was hooked. Isn't that nice? J. Scott Phillips, I came to BookTube during the quarantine and didn't have the peace of mind to get lost in a book. But BookTube allowed me to get my reading fixed vicariously. Candy Angle says, did Britta defend the murder of Dutch policeman Pim Fortune? No, it has never come up. J. Scott Phillips, once I got back to reading normally again, I couldn't leave BookTube behind. It stuck with me and became part of my reading life. Wilson is here. Good Lord, Wilson just made a video, the first one in 15 years. Jack the Ripper killed in 1888-91, the exact duration of Gandhi's stint in London to study law. Curious, methinks. Do you have the dates exactly right there, Sunshine? Are you under the impression that Jack the Ripper was killing people in 1891? Quentin Curious Volume says, on the first season of Russian Doll, there was a character who was a PhD student writing a dissertation about John Updike, Probably the most unrealistic thing in the whole series. Michael Lombardo says, "Has there been a true crime starter kit? How could I make one? I'll be able to make one by the end of the summer, but I couldn't make one now." Michael Lombardo, last high profile true crime I read was I'll Be Gone in the Dark. Jasper says the most anxiety inducing part of this Middle East crisis is Joe Biden saying he was going to address the nation and then suddenly canceling that. You can probably see why, right? He's probably in the Situation Room. Uh, J. Scott Phillips, oh yes, I remember Walter Cronkite as well as you remember Walter Winchell. How dare you, sir? At long last, how dare you? Uh, Ryan says Ward Farnsworth definitely had bodies in his floorboards. Kevin L says the video of Walter Cronkite announcing the death of JFK is heartbreaking. Uh, Steve Runstein says is responding to Book Girl TV. Uh, Richard Reed says Cronkite was a good sailor. Michael Lombardo says was Mr. Cronkite already the voice of the nation before his announcement of the death of JFK? Yes. Yeah, not the voice of the nation. He wasn't. It wasn't anything nationalistic, but he was the one we all. It was, we can disagree on, Hubert Humphrey or the Cuban Missile Crisis or anything like that. We can disagree on anything, but that's going to stop at the edge of the news. Of course, we're going to listen to Walter Cronkite. Uh, Dorothy Satterfield, my father was a Huntley Brinkley fan, so that's what we watched. Well, can't really go wrong with Brinkley. Uh, Nietzschean wig, favorite romantic poet, and favorite poem by said poet. That's great. This is a Stevestream, not a quiz. Ryan says, "Thank you for Reason of Insanity. Book rec looks fantastic. You'd probably have to buy a secondhand paperback, right? I don't think By Reason of Insanity is in print or is ever going to be in print again, right? Uh, I used to have a copy with that extremely disturbing cover, and I don't anymore. Uh, Nietzschean wig. I saw a certain booktuber claiming to have read 10 books in a week and 109 books in a year. My eyes roll at the virtue signaling stupidity and performativity of much of BookTube. Um, okay. Uh, uh, I agree with the with the virtue signaling and the performativity of much of BookTube. Are you insinuating that the only reason that someone would post such numbers is if those numbers are obviously untrue? Because well, anyway, it's the longtime viewers of this channel are reading that comment and howling with laughter. Gandhi Angle says, "No, I must protest. Don't put Roth in with that group. Roth proved to be the alarming prescient with the plot against America." Oh, come on. Come on. Whole bunch of people made predictions like that in a whole bunch of different books. I'm not putting him in that group because whether or not he accurately predicted in broad outlines something that might have happened in the American news isn't why he would be in that list or not be. It would be that he's a crappy writer, a crappy, incredibly overestimated writer, which is what made that category for me 50 years ago. And I told everybody, these people from that category are gone. The minute they're dead, their books are going to start to die with them. And people would always say, "Oh, you just don't like contemporary writers." And I would tell people, "Okay, well, you're saying that I just don't like contemporary writers. When I give you that list of people, I'm giving you this list of people in a dozen different Friday evenings here over wine and calzones. Has Thomas Pynchon's name ever been on that list? No. Is Thomas Pynchon still writing novels currently? Yes, he is. So, uh, Richard Reed's link booktube is where I find my serial killers. Nietzsche and Wig, but I do love those channels. I watch regularly. Maxim Stedich, Roth, who? Henry Roth, Joseph Roth. Exactly. They stand a much better chance. Nietzsche and Wig is back. I read The Plot Against America when I was 15. I enjoyed it. American Pastoral, which I read many years later, I did not care for. Uh, Richardson Reeves mentioning Roth IRA. NP Hunt, I'm so interested in true crime that I've done an online introduction to forensic science course. It was really interesting, and it set me off on tons of other topics of research just for fun. God, I hope it doesn't come to that with me. It might. I have to pick your brain on a whole bunch of things. Game of Authors says, fascinating book, Heartland Serial Killers, Belle Guinness, Johann Hock, and the Murder for Profit in Gaslight Era Chicago by Richard Lindbergh. Well, I'll be consulting this chat uh, after the fact to get all of these recommendations, but we still have to wrap this chat up. right? We can just go on all night talking about all sorts of things. Uh, although you'll notice I do leave subjects out. I did not. I refrained. I restrained myself from talking about, for instance, cartoonist kayfabe. It was on my mind all week long, but I know that a lot of you just want me to shut up and dribble, to just stick to books. Jasper says John Wayne Gacy was getting involved in politics before he was caught. Makes you think. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. No, it doesn't. Not in the way you're implying. No, that's the first time we have disagreed tonight. Although the picture of him standing next to Rosalind Carter, good lord. I mean, I know that in its history, the Secret Service has a lot bigger blunders than that, but I mean, you've got there's still a pretty big blunder on their part. You've got a series of photos now for all time of a guy with bodies buried in his basement standing next to the first lady. It's the Secret Service's job to make sure that doesn't happen. Book chat with Pat is here. I grew up where the John List murders took place. The stuff of nightmares for years. He was a classmate's Sunday school teacher. Oh my. Dorothy Satterfield says anybody who dresses up as a clown is suspicious. Richard Reed says fiction idea, serial killer of serial killers. Well, uh, Madison, Wisconsin represents. Not that I mean to not that I mean to cast any kind of spotlight on one particular beautiful young man in his short shorts, but that idea has already been done. Nexus in comic books is a serial killer of serial killers. I think uh, I think I would hear about it if I just boosted that idea. Geo Craftsman says I read once about how Gacy confessed his first crime, to his wife, and she tolerated. It made me wonder a lot. I don't know about that. I don't know that that is confirmed. I don't think he ever did that. Uh, uh, let's see. DT, what do you think of the comedian Tim Dillon or Shane Gillis? Uh, they would fall under the umbrella of popular entertainment. And under the umbrella of popular entertainment, there is only Boy Kills World and nothing else. Zeba Bronstein says BTK displayed some empathy or maybe sympathy while in the act, or at least while prepping a few times. I'm not aware of those details. I you probably know more than I do about the case. What I know about the case is a little bit detailed, and I don't recall any example where that happened beforehand or during, only after. Uh, Matt Sheridan, happy Saturday, Steve. Sorry to be so late to the party. Yes, we're wrapping things up. Gandhi Angle says Biden and Netanyahu are scheduled to speak tonight, according to CNN. I don't doubt it. That mention earlier of Israel announcing that it has missiles in the air, that's terrifying. That's absolutely terrifying. Uh, Matt Sheridan says Cronkite had a voice of butter. Are you a fan of the Marx Brothers? Well, these two things go together? This chat is all over the world. I am a fan of the Marx Brothers, and he did have a voice like butter. Andy Guy says, let's not forget the original serial killer, God in the Old Testament. Well, like I said, I'm first of all, God is a fictional character, and I'm talking about real people. But also, God in the Old Testament would certainly count as murders committed under the umbrella of the state, right? Certainly, he would. He is the ultimate state. I'm talking about people who go nuts, and I don't know that there is an example of that in the Bible. I'm not sure that there are many examples of that in ancient literature, just period. And I don't know why that is. If this is a product of human psychology occasionally missing a stitch, then it should happen everywhere. Unless maybe social mores are involved in there, some societies just won't talk about it. Uh, Richardson Reed says joint declaration. Well, it's obviously going to have to be something. They're going to have to calm the nerves of an entire world because this is what could do it. This is the thing that could make this pop off into an international thing, and that would be disastrous, absolutely disastrous. Uh, uh, I mean, it's one thing for apparently for Israel to be exterminating the Palestinians. Apparently, that is not enough to get the surrounding Arab nations to put aside their own quabbles and band together against Israel. Apparently, that's not enough for that to happen. That was a calculated gamble. Uh, but Launching missiles on Tehran would certainly do that. And then it's a whole new ballgame. It'll be the only thing anybody talks about tomorrow. Uh, Matt Sheridan says, had to read Rings of Saturn for class and meh. Trip says, random question, but what do you think of China is going to do next? Yeah, we'll find out in the next 12 hours. Gandhi Angle says, I believe Lyndon Johnson stated that the war in Vietnam was lost when Cronkite criticized it during his newscast. Yeah, that was the standard refrain, is that you lost America for the war when you lost Cronkite. Anti Gaia, Biden needs to be tough with BB. Uh, well, I don't know what shape that would take now. I really don't. Vivian says, do you remember what Walter Cronkite said at the end of each day? I remember vividly uh, when it started to fail him. I love that send off that he had every night. It was just so definitive and so casual. But I was watching him right to the end, and before he retired, he was flubbing even his most famous line at the end of every broadcast, and he was misreading things and having to backtrack sometimes two whole sentences to get back to where he'd begun. It was a little bit. It went on a little too long. I was sorry about that. Gandhi Angle says, you're getting my blood pressure up about Roth. Well, I calls him like I sees him. And I called this one half a century ago or more. Half a century ago or more, I was saying, this guy is nothing. He's so bad that the minute he's not around for his cult of personality to keep inflating his crappy books will disappear right into the grave with him. And same thing with Bellow, and same thing with Mailer, and same thing with Updike. And I was right about all of them. But anyway, Jasper says you should make an alternate history starter kit. Would Fatherland be on it? Well, I could make a starter kit just on what if the Nazis won the war. There are at least 10 great books on that subject alone. Nietzsche and Wig says, will you continue with the President starter kit? Well, it's been 6 years, so probably not. Stephen Bronstein says, Dexter is a fictional serial killer of other naughty killers. Yeah, I have a lot of problems with the Dexter show and the books. The idea of a serial killer as a hero, it just, or one who's in control of what he's doing to the extent that, yeah. Anyway, I guess it's it's a circle that just keeps turning because I felt the same way about an old TV show that most of you will not remember called Hogan's Heroes. I was watching that every week, saying, "What on earth? You can't make a TV show like this." Uh, that reading guy says you bring up a good point about serial killers scorning incels, but I can't help but think the internet has something to do with the lowering numbers. Maybe video games, the dark web. Well, video games and dark web would be the same thing, though. It would still be the contention is that these things are sublimating urges and thereby giving people a kind of release valve to stop them from acting on those urges. And there might be something to that. I get the impression that the thing we're describing with serial killers is that their urges are too strong to be sublimated. And if that's true, well, then there would be no effective valve release mechanism. That's what a serial killer would be. It would be someone who that doesn't work with. Uh, Nietzsche and Wig says thoughts on Gore Vidal's Julian. I read it a few years ago and loved it. Jay Preeney's biography of him is also a lot of fun, even if it suffers from over closeness to its subject. I like Julian very much. Richard Reese has got to run. International news calling. Be well, all. I know I need to go anywhere myself. This has been so much fun. I mean, it's my mistake. It's been split brain because of my mistake in linking two different subjects, but still, it's been enormous fun as always. But we should quit at 10 past the hour. The IDF, Gandhi Angle says the IDF said planes in the air. Not sure if it means missiles. It's really bad either way. They're not going to send sightseeing planes up. The planes will have missiles, and it's really bad either way. It's just Mystery and Mayhem. Try to enjoy the rest of your weekend, everyone. Take care. DT says The Burbs is a great serial killer movie. Matt Sheridan says The Burbs is amazing. Michael Lombardo says, could there be a summer movie preview of Steve approved films? Serial killers would be a bonus. I won't be watching any movies this summer. Just one. I'll just be watching Boy Kills World over and over and over again and nothing else. Oh wait, the chat jumped. Let's go find you because we're wrapping up. FI says, just imagine if Trump were in the situation we're in right now. I know. Well, in any situation like this, you just, as bad as it is, you can just imagine what it would be like if Stephen Miller were in charge of the country. Jasper says Mark Richardson is being called in by the White House a la Tom Clancy novel. It'd be nice if Mark were in the White House. That would be great. But I kind of trust the team that's in place now. Connor says, "How will it get? Will we get 10 videos a day when you get drafted, Steve?" Well, I'm a little older than I look. I doubt I would be drafted. Steve Bronstein, is there a chance it was all a huge coincidence and OJ was actually innocent and was just turned out to be an extremely weird guy? No, no. OJ Simpson was guilty, completely guilty. Matt Sheridan, is Israel/Iran issue is officially scaring me. I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. I haven't even looked at it because I've been doing the Stevestream and the events have changed in the last 2 hours. But it should scare you. It absolutely should scare you because it's not just Iran. There's an enormous superpower behind Israel, and there's an enormous superpower behind Iran. It's not just Iran, although that is not a small just. If it ignites the whole East, that's a big problem. That is a huge story. Uh, Tolstoy 111, the plot against America was feebly imagined hackwork, flavorless and creatively joyless. J. Scott Phillips says, time to go, and that's the way it is. Good night, David. Good night, Chet, and all the ships at sea. Michael Lombardo says, Jackie Collins is another one, none on the shelf now. But she wasn't claimed as the second coming of great American literature. Matt Sheridan says, what are your theories about the identity of Jack the Ripper? I have plenty of theories. That reading guy, which current mega popular writers will experience the same fate as Roth and Updike? I bet you can guess some of the writers that I say will suffer that same fate. I bet you can guess. Tolstoy 111 is responding to Matt Sheridan. Gandhi Angles is responding to Tolstoy 111. View from the bar. Steve, you've got a great, breezy, chatty ebook in you, 150 pages, an essay about the 10 major serial killers in your lifetime, what it was like to follow their coverage. But I didn't follow their coverage. Like I mentioned an hour or 2 hours ago, I didn't follow their coverage. Their coverage was always just sort of playing in the background while I was doing something else. Uh, Jasper Antonelli says, got sucked into reading Gore Vidal's essays yesterday, read for 5 hours straight without realizing it. Yeah, his essays will do that. Vivian says, when will the next Steve stream be? I'm thinking tomorrow night, if we're all still alive. Uh, uh, Lou G says, I know nothing. Schultz was a great character on Hogan's Heroes. I agree completely. Schultz was a great character. Also, Colonel Klink was an absolutely great character. But still, think about what that show was. It should never have existed. Uh, Matt Sheridan says, no way in hell OJ was innocent. No, OJ was guilty. He was absolutely guilty. View from the bar says, what's the deal with everyone at OJ's deathbed needing to sign NDAs? Does it suggest a deathbed confession? Can their secrecy be promised to a dead guy? Yeah, I heard that detail, and that was the first thought of mine, was that he confessed. Or that they signed the NDAs because somebody, his lawyer or whatever, was worried that he would confess. Maybe he didn't do it. Dorothy Satterfield says, if it ignites the whole Mideast, it'll sure take the spotlight off Trump on Monday. In this country, it might take the spotlight off jury selection. But the minute Trump shows up in that courtroom, nothing will take the spotlight off that, unless an actual gigantic war does erupt. That reading guy says, yes, Steve, I could guess, but I didn't want to have to work at it. Rooney and McCarthy, which others? David Foster, can we help anybody? Bueller. Uh, Matt Sheridan, OJ is currently in hell searching for the real killer. yes. yes. Uh, no, I don't know where that question came from. Of course, OJ is guilty, completely guilty. There wasn't a single person anywhere in LA in law enforcement that didn't know that he was guilty the minute they heard what had happened. They didn't need any forensic evidence. They'd been called to that address too many times. How many people have come forward over the years mentioning that they knew somebody on the police force that said that, including plenty of people on the police force who said this guy is going to kill his wife. They don't know about Rob Goldman, but he's certainly going to kill his wife if things continue this way. They couldn't do anything about it. You can't. This is not Minority Report. You can't arrest somebody for a crime you know they're going to commit. Uh, but there were plenty of cops that went out to that address that knew that something horrible was coming. Uh, DT says, "Is Stephen King one of those you predict will vanish?" Yes. Uh, Hannah's book says, "Good night, folks. Thank you, Steve." Yes, we all have to wrap this up. We're all leaving. We're all going to obsess about the news about the Middle East. That's what we're all going to do after a friendly Steve stream about serial killers. Gandhi Engel says the fact that he wrote the book "If I Did It" is extremely disturbing, unbelievably psychotic behavior, just next level psychotic behavior. Uh, Matt Sheridan says it's such a tragedy what happened to Nicole, all the abuse and horror she went through before her murder. Yeah, she knew it was coming. She knew it was coming. Why? Not to blame the victim. Of course, I'm not blaming the victim, but she had to know what she was risking, and had many opportunities. Just get the hell out. Just never mind anything else. Never mind the shirt on your back. Just get the hell out. She didn't do it. Probably kept hoping that the worst wouldn't happen. Uh, that reading guy says one more blob watch. Well, it's not going to have changed. It was just a few minutes ago. Uh, it's going to be the same thing here. Let's see. Uh, yeah, it's not going to have changed. It's still, you got a tiny system over the Great Lakes and a tiny system in California, and then this huge system that was just here dumped a huge amount of rain and is now gone. But I doubt very much that this system is going to do anything for Boston unless it gains a lot of strength after it passes the Great Lakes, which could easily happen. But the size it is now, it won't do anything to Boston. Matt Sheridan says OJ's defense team knew damn well he was guilty. Yes, they did. One in particular. Mild Rumpus says, good night. That reading guy says, I can't imagine being in a relationship with someone who you fear will kill you. How did Deb handle it? I'm the one who had to worry, not her. Matt Sheridan says, I'm now going to crack open Bugliosi's book on JFK. I gone are the days when I will do that. When I do that now, I crack open the ebook because the physical book is just a joke. Uh, uh, but we have to wrap up this Steve stream. I keep saying that, but we have to wrap this up because we've got world news to look at. Something serious is happening while we're frittering away talk on BookTube, and also obviously the baby needs to go outside. See, she's noticing the word "out," aren't you, baby? You're noticing the word "out." She wouldn't be paying attention to anything like this human stuff if she didn't want to go out. So I'm gonna have to wrap this up because she's now awake and paying attention to what I'm saying, and that means she wants something. So I'm gonna wrap this up, and we will have a Steve stream tomorrow night. Thank you all for being here. This was wonderful. I wish I could tell exactly on the screen the numbers are. Is it the thing with the little people heads next to it? So this was 87. There's 87 people. That's pretty good. Um, but this was wonderful. I had a wonderful time. We will do this again tomorrow night if I can get my ducks in the row. We will do this again tomorrow night, and maybe I will bring up a couple of a subject alone, either serial killers or booktube. I may bring up those alone so that we can concentrate on them because I didn't hear quite as much as I wanted to about booktube. But uh, it's clearly time to go. I am going to end the Steve stream, take the bean outside to walk around for a while, and then look at the news. Then I'm going to look at the news. A major news story is unfolding right now. Uh, that deserves attention. You just got to pay attention to that. So maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow. But I will wrap this up for now, and I'll see you all then. This was absolutely wonderful, despite the grim backdrop. So we'll see you tomorrow, and we'll see how things have changed. So have a good night, BookTube. Thank you all. Thank you all very much for being here. All right, baby.